The emergency lights flickered red across the broken hallways of the pale horizon as Commander Zathari pulled himself through the wreckage. His 4 eyes scanned the darkness, searching for survivors among the twisted metal and shattered glass. The attack had come without warning. Now his beautiful diplomatic vessel was nothing more than a drifting tomb. Zathari was Volanthi, a species known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and their long lives. His people could live for 800 years, and at just over 200, he was still considered young. His blue skin glowed faintly in the darkness, a natural bioluminescence that all Volanthi possessed. Right now, that glow was weak, flickering with exhaustion and fear. "Commander," called a voice from somewhere ahead. It was Morel, his aide, her own skin pulsing with distress. "I have found others. 12 of us remain." 12. They had started with 47 crew members. Scholars, diplomats, scientists. Not a single warrior among them. The Volanthi had not fought a war in over 3,000 years. They had forgotten how. The Krethnak raiders had not forgotten. They were a brutal species, pirates who traveled the space lanes looking for easy prey. The pale horizon, with its minimal weapons and thin shields, had been the easiest prey imaginable. The raiders had torn through them in minutes, taking everything of value and leaving them to die in the cold void of space. Zathari gathered the survivors in what remained of the medical bay. The room was damaged but still held atmosphere, and the emergency systems were keeping them alive for now. But he could see the readouts on the wall, and they told a grim story. "Oxygen reserves will last approximately 6 hours, said Morel quietly, so the others would not hear. "Our distress beacon was destroyed in the attack. No one knows we are here." The commander closed his 4 eyes and tried to think. They were in the asteroid field of Kepler 442, a remote region of space far from any major shipping lanes. The chances of another vessel passing close enough to detect their weak life signs were incredibly small. They were going to die here, alone and forgotten. In the darkness between the stars, he thought of his family on Volanthos Prime, his bondmate of 60 years, his 3 children, still young by Volanthi standards. He would never see them again. He would never watch his children grow, never hold his grandchildren, never complete the great diplomatic work he had dedicated his life to. "Commander," said Morel suddenly, her skin flashing with surprise. "I am detecting a vessel." Zathari opened his eyes. "What? Where?" "It is small. A cargo freighter, I believe. Human design." She was working frantically at a damaged console, her 4-fingered hands moving with desperate speed. "They are passing through the asteroid field, approximately 40,000 kilometers from our position. Can we signal them?" "The main communications array is destroyed, but I may be able to create a basic transmission using parts from the emergency systems. It will be weak. They may not receive it." "Do it," said Zathari. "It is our only chance." Morel worked for nearly an hour, pulling components from damaged equipment and wiring them together in ways that would have made their engineers weep. The other survivors watched in silence, too afraid to hope, too desperate to look away. Finally, she activated the makeshift beacon and sent a simple message into the void. They waited. Minutes passed. The oxygen counter continued its slow countdown towards 0, and then, impossibly, wonderfully, a voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Captain Lucy Morrow of the cargo freighter Dusty Road. We are receiving your distress signal. Please respond with your status and coordinates." Zathari felt his legs grow weak. He grabbed the communication device with trembling hands. "Captain Morrow, this is Commander Zathari of the Volanthi Consortium vessel, Pale Horizon. We were attacked by Krethnak raiders. Our ship is destroyed. We have 12 survivors with approximately 5 hours of oxygen remaining. Please, we need immediate assistance." There was a brief pause. When the human spoke again, her voice was calm and steady. "Happy that, Commander. Hang tight. We are altering course to your position. Estimated arrival time is 47 minutes. We are coming to get you." The survivors erupted in sounds of relief and joy. Morel collapsed against the wall, her skin rippling with colors of overwhelming emotion. Zathari simply stood there, holding the communication device, unable to believe what was happening. The dusty road arrived exactly when promised. It was an old ship, scarred and weathered from years of hauling cargo across the galaxy. Its captain was a human woman in her 50s, with gray streaks in her brown hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of a hard life. She docked her ship with the wreckage of the pale horizon and personally led the rescue team through the debris. "Everyone stay calm," she said as she entered the medical bay. "We have plenty of room on my ship. Let us get you folks out of here." The humans worked quickly and efficiently. They helped the injured, carried those who could not walk, and transferred all 12 survivors to the dusty road in under an hour. The cargo freighter was not luxurious, but it was warm and safe and full of air. To Zethary it felt like paradise. Captain Morrow gave them food from her own supplies. She had her crew convert a cargo bay into temporary living quarters with bedding and privacy screens. Her ship's medic, a young man named Danny Cole, treated their wounds with whatever supplies he had available. "We are not really set up for Valanthi biology," Danny admitted, "but I have done some reading. Let me know if anything feels wrong." Zethary was overwhelmed. He sought out Captain Morrow on the bridge of her ship, where she was plotting a new course. "Captain," he said, "I must ask, where are you taking us?" "There is a Valanthi outpost about 3 weeks from here," she replied, without looking up from her navigation charts. "That is your closest territory, right? We will take you there." 3 weeks? But surely that will delay your cargo deliveries. You will lose money. Perhaps significant amounts. Now Lucy Morrow did look up, and there was something in her eyes that Zethary did not quite understand. Something warm and slightly amused. "Commander, you were dying. Your people were dying. We were here, and we could help. What else were we supposed to do? But the cost to you is my problem, not yours." She turned back to her charts. "Get some rest. You have been through a lot." Zethary stood there for a long moment, trying to find words. In his 2 centuries of life, he had negotiated treaties with a dozen species. He had studied the cultures and customs of civilizations across the galaxy. He understood trade and politics and the complex web of favors and obligations that held interstellar society together. He had never encountered anything like this. A stranger risking significant personal loss to help people she had never met. From a species she had no alliance with, in a situation that offered her nothing in return. It went against everything he understood about how the universe worked. And yet here he was, alive because of exactly that kind of irrational, beautiful kindness. He pressed his 4-fingered hand to his chest over the place where his heart beat, and spoke words that had not been used by his people in over 1,000 years. "Captain Lucy Morrow, I name you friend of my blood. On behalf of the Valanthi Consortium, I declare a sacred debt. When humanity is in need, we will answer. When your people call, we will come. This I swear on my life and the lives of all those you have saved today." Lucy glanced at him, eyebrows raised. "That sounds very serious. It is the most serious oath my people can make." She smiled, a simple human expression that Zethary was only beginning to understand. "Well, I appreciate that, Commander. But really, you do not owe us anything. We just did what anyone would do." Zethary did not argue. He simply bowed and returned to his people. But he knew the truth. Lucy Morrow had not done what anyone would do. She had done what only the best and kindest beings in the universe would do, and the Valanthi never forgot their debts. 3 weeks later, the dusty road delivered them safely to the outpost. Lucy refused all payment, all gifts, all offers of compensation. She simply waved goodbye, turned her ship around, and flew back out into the stars. Zethary watched her go and made a silent promise. One day, he would find a way to repay her. No matter how long it took, 30 years passed in the galaxy, and much changed during that time. The scattered Krethnok raiders, who had once been a minor nuisance, slowly began to unite under a new leader. A warlord named Thaxel, who had visions of empire. He gathered the raider clans together through a combination of brutal strength and cunning promises, and within 2 decades, the Krethnok Dominion controlled an entire sector of space. Thaxel was not satisfied with one sector. He wanted more. He wanted everything. The Dominion began to expand, conquering world after world. Species that resisted were destroyed. Species that surrendered were enslaved. The galaxy watched with growing horror as the Krethnak war machine rolled forward. Seemingly unstoppable, humanity was directly in their path. The United Earth Coalition had grown significantly since the days when Lucy Morrow flew her cargo ship through the asteroid fields of Kepler 2, 442. Humans now occupied 17 colony worlds spread across 3 star systems. With a combined population of nearly 2 billion people, they had built a respectable fleet of warships to protect their territory, enough to handle pirates and minor conflicts. It was nowhere near enough to stop the Krethnak. The first battle happened at a human outpost called Horizon's Edge, a small colony on the border of human space. Admiral Kevin Price commanded the defense force. A fleet of 12 warships that represented nearly a third of humanity's total military strength. When the Krethnak arrived with 60 dreadnoughts, he knew immediately that they could not win. But Kevin Price was human, and humans did not abandon their people. All ships, he ordered, his voice steady, despite the fear in his heart. Concentrate fire on the lead vessels. We need to buy time for the civilian evacuations. The battle lasted for hours. Human ships fought with desperate courage, throwing themselves against the overwhelming Krethnak force again and again. They destroyed 7 enemy vessels and damaged a dozen more. But for every Krethnak ship they hurt, they lost one of their own. When it was over, 8 human warships were nothing but debris. Over 2,000 sailors were dead. The colony of Horizon's Edge was a burning ruin, and the Krethnak fleet, barely scratched, continued its advance toward the heart of human territory. Admiral Price retreated with his 4 surviving ships to the colony world of New Portland. 4 million humans lived there, going about their lives, unaware that death was coming for them. He sent an emergency message on all frequencies, broadcasting to anyone in the galaxy who might be listening. This is Admiral Kevin Price of the United Earth Coalition. Humanity is under attack. The Krethnak Dominion has declared war on our species. They have already destroyed one of our colonies, and they are advancing on our remaining worlds. We are requesting immediate assistance from any allied powers. We cannot survive alone. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need your help. The message traveled across the stars at the speed of light, reaching hundreds of worlds, thousands of species. Leaders and governments received the transmission and discussed it in their halls of power. None of them responded. The Krethnak were too strong. The risk was too great. Helping humanity would mean making an enemy of the Dominion, and no species was willing to take that chance. The humans would have to face their fate alone. On the distant world of Valanthos Prime, in a chamber of crystalline light where the leaders of the Valanthi Consortium gathered to make their most important decisions, High Counselor Zethary listened to the human transmission with all 4 of his eyes closed. He was old now by human standards, past 80 in their years, but by Valanthi measure, he was still in his prime. He had risen through the ranks of his government over the decades, eventually becoming the leader of his entire species. He had used that position to build alliances, to strengthen friendships, to create a web of mutual trust and obligation that stretched across dozens of worlds. And he had never forgotten the cargo ship captain who had saved his life when he was young. The council must decide, said Counselor Marin, one of the more cautious members of the government. Do we respond to this human request? We cannot, said another Counselor Vethari. The Krethnak would destroy us. Our fleet is small. Our military is weak. We have not fought a war in 3,000 years.
Then we should let them die?
Asked Zethary quietly. The chamber fell silent. High Counselor, said Marin carefully, we all sympathize with the humans, but we must think of our own people first. The Valanthi number in the billions. We cannot risk their lives for the sake of another species. Zethary opened his eyes. The bioluminescence of his skin, normally a calm blue, was flickering with colors that indicated deep emotion. 30 years ago, he said, I was dying in the wreckage of my ship. My crew was dying with me. We had ours to live. No hope of rescue, no chance of survival. And then a human came. A cargo ship captain named Lucy Morrow. She risked her ship, her crew, her livelihood to save us. Strangers, aliens, beings she had never met and would never see again. He stood up from his seat, his ancient robes flowing around him. When I tried to thank her, when I tried to offer payment, do you know what she said? She said that we were dying and she was there, and that was all there was to it. She did not calculate the cost. She did not weigh the benefits. She simply helped, because helping was the right thing to do. That was one human, said Vethry. We cannot base policy on the actions of one individual. But it was not just one human, said Zethary. It was all of them. Her crew, her medic, every person on that ship. They all treated us with kindness, asked for nothing, and went on their way. And now, their entire species faces extinction. He walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display showed the positions of human worlds and the advancing Krethnok fleet. I spoke the words of debt binding that day. I swore that the Volanthi would answer when humanity called. For 30 years, the humans have never asked us for anything. They probably forgot about my promise. They probably think it was just words. He turned to face the council. I intend to show them otherwise. If we intervene, we will be destroyed, said Marin. Perhaps, said Zethary. Or perhaps not. We may not have a great fleet, but we have something more valuable. We have friends. For thousands of years, the Volanthi have built relationships with other species across the galaxy. We have helped them, traded with them, supported them in their times of need. They owe us favors, just as we owed the humans. He activated the display, and it showed a web of connections spreading out from Volanthos Prime to dozens of other worlds. Krix Collective, the Singing Ones of Telver, the Garati Shepherds, the Mandara Union, the Crystalborn of Axion 7. All of them have benefited from Volanthi friendship over the centuries. All of them owe us debts. If we call upon them now, they will answer. You would use all of our political capital for this? Asked Vethry, shocked. Debts that took centuries to accumulate? Yes, said Zethary simply, because that is what debts are for. They are meant to be repaid when the need is greatest. And I can think of no greater need than this. The council debated for hours. Some argued passionately against intervention, warning of the risks and the costs. Others began to see the wisdom in Zethary's words, recognizing that if the Volanthi abandoned their promise, their reputation for trustworthiness would be destroyed forever. In the end, the vote was close. But it was enough. The Volanthi Consortium would honor its debt to humanity. Zethary did not waste a moment. He sent messages to every species that owed the Volanthi a favor, calling in centuries of accumulated goodwill in a single, desperate gamble. Some refused. Many hesitated. But enough agreed the Krix, an insectoid species whose hive queens remembered Volanthi aid during a great plague. The Garati, gentle giants, who had been saved from extinction by Volanthi intervention 2 centuries ago. The Telvar, crystalline beings whose world had been protected by Velalanthi diplomacy. One by one, they committed their fleets. And as the ships began to gather, Zethary sent a message of his own to the humans. To the Admiral, who was preparing to die defending a world he could not save. Admiral Price, I am High Counselor Zethary of the Volanthi Consortium. 30 years ago, a human saved my life. Today, we repay that debt.
Hey, hold on.
We are coming. Admiral Kevin Price had not slept in 3 days. He stood on the bridge of the UEC Relentless, the flagship of what remained of humanity's fleet, watched the tactical display with eyes that burned from exhaustion. The Krethnok were coming. 3 days away, maybe 4 if humanity was lucky. 4 million people on the planet below, looking up at the stars, trusting their navy to protect them. He had 6 ships. 6 ships against 60 dreadnoughts. It was not even a fight. It was an execution. His crew moved around him in quiet efficiency, preparing for a battle they knew they could not win. Nobody spoke about surrender. Nobody spoke about retreat. They were human, and humans protected their own. Even when protection was impossible, Lieutenant Maria Vance sat at the communications station. monitoring the frequencies for any response to their distress call. For 3 days, she had heard nothing but silence. The galaxy had abandoned humanity to its fate, and then, suddenly, her console lit up with signals. "Admiral," she said, her voice strange, "I am detecting ships entering the system." Kevin felt his heart sink. The Krethnok were early. They had less time than he thought. "How many?" he asked, already dreading the answer. "I am not sure, sir. The sensors are having trouble identifying them." Maria looked up at him, and there was something in her face that he could not read. "Sir, these are not Krethnak's signatures." Kevin moved to stand behind her, looking at her display. Ships were appearing at the edge of the system, emerging from faster-than-light travel in wave after wave. Their energy signatures were unfamiliar, their designs unlike anything in his database. And they kept coming. "Contact from the lead vessel," said Maria. Her voice was shaking now, but not with fear. With something else entirely, the main view screen activated, and Kevin found himself looking at an alien face. 4 eyes, blue bioluminescent skin, wearing robes of white and silver. The being was old, clearly elderly by whatever standards his species used. But there was strength in his posture and determination in his expression. "Admiral Price," the alien said. "I am High Counselor Zethary of the Valanthi Consortium. We received your distress call. We have come to help." Kevin opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Behind the Valanthi, the sensor display showed more and more ships arriving. 50, 100, 200. Ships of all sizes and designs, representing technologies he had never seen before. "I do not understand," Kevin finally managed. "The Valanthi have no military alliance with Earth. We have never even had official diplomatic contact. Why would you come?" Zetharia's skin rippled with colors that Kevin could not interpret. 30 years ago, Admiral, I was a young commander on a diplomatic vessel. We were attacked by Krethnok raiders and left to die in an asteroid field. A human cargo ship captain named Lucy Morrow found us. She saved my life and the lives of my crew. She asked for nothing in return." Kevin stared at him. "One rescue mission? That was 30 years ago." "Yes. And on that day, I swore a sacred oath. I told Captain Morrow that the Valanthi owed humanity a debt, to be repaid when the need was greatest." She smiled and said, "We did not owe her anything." Zethari's 4 eyes seemed to look directly into Kevin's soul. She was wrong. And now we are here to prove it. The view screen split into multiple feeds as other alien commanders joined the transmission. Kevin saw beings he had only read about in old exploration reports. The Krix, massive insectoids with gleaming carapaces and compound eyes that reflected the light of their bridge. The Garati, enormous gentle creatures whose size belied their peaceful nature. The Telver, crystalline beings whose bodies hummed with harmonic frequencies, and other species he did not recognize at all. "The Valanthi called upon us," said the Krix Hive Queen, her mandibles clicking as she spoke. "They have been our friends for centuries. When they asked us to help the humans, we did not hesitate." "The Garati remember our debts?" rumbled the massive creature on another screen. "The Valanthi saved our species from extinction 200 years ago. Now they ask us to save another species. We are honored to do so." "The Telver sing of gratitude," chimed the crystalline being, its voice like bells in harmony. "We owe the Valanthi much. If they say humanity deserves protection, then humanity shall have protection." Kevin felt moisture in his eyes. He blinked rapidly, trying to maintain his composure. He was a military officer, a professional, a leader. He could not break down in front of his crew, but his crew was not watching him. They were watching the screens, watching the ships continue to arrive, watching the impossible become real. Lieutenant Vance was openly crying at her station. Even the most hardened veterans had tears streaming down their faces. "How many ships?" Kevin asked, his voice hoarse. "The final count is 317 vessels," said Zethary, representing 8 different species. "We call ourselves the Combined Species Alliance, and we are here to fight alongside you. 317 ships against 60 Krethnok dreadnoughts." For the first time in days, Kevin allowed himself to feel something other than despair. Counselor Zethary, he said slowly, I do not know what to say. My people were prepared to die here. We had accepted that this would be our end. I know, said Zethary gently. I watched your battle at Horizon's Edge. I saw how your ships threw themselves against the enemy to protect civilians who could not fight for themselves. That is when I knew that Lucy Morrow was not unique among her species. That is when I knew that humanity was worth saving. The Hive Queen of the Cricks leaned forward on her screen. Your people fight with courage, Admiral. They fight for each other, not for conquest or glory. The galaxy needs more species like that. The Garati have watched many civilizations rise and fall, said the massive alien. We have seen empires built on cruelty and empires built on greed. But we have rarely seen a species that helps strangers simply because it is the right thing to do. When we learned what Captain Morrow did for the Volanthi, we knew we had to come. Kevin wiped his eyes. She was just a cargo ship captain. She had no idea that what she did would matter this much. That is precisely why it matters, said Zethary. She did not help us because she expected a reward. She did not save us because she wanted something in return. She helped us because we needed help, and she was able to provide it. That kind of simple, pure kindness is the rarest thing in the universe. It deserves to be protected. It deserves to be honored. It deserves to survive. The tactical display showed the combined fleet taking up positions around New Portland. Human ships flew alongside alien vessels of designs they had never seen before, forming a defensive formation that covered every approach to the planet. 4 million humans on the surface would live to see another day. Admiral Price, said Zethary formally, I offer you command of the Combined Species Alliance for the duration of this conflict. You know the Krethnak? You have fought them. You understand their tactics. We will follow your orders. Kevin was stunned. You would place your ships under human command? We have watched how humans lead. At Horizon's Edge, you stayed to fight when you could have fled. You sacrificed ships to save civilians. You asked your crews to die not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that the strong should protect the weak.
Ow.
The Volanthi's skin glowed with warm colors. That is the kind of leader we are willing to follow. Kevin straightened his back, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. But it was no longer the crushing weight of certain defeat. It was the weight of purpose, of meaning, of a chance to actually win. Then let us begin planning our defense, he said. The Krethnak will be here in 3 days. We have a lot of work to do. For the next 72 hours, the combined fleet prepared for battle. Human tactical officers worked alongside alien strategists, sharing information and developing plans. Engineers from different species exchanged technical data, looking for ways to combine their technologies. Soldiers who had never met before learned to trust each other with their lives, and throughout it all, Kevin Price thought about a cargo ship captain named Lucy Morrow, who had stopped to help some strangers 30 years ago, and never asked for anything in return. He hoped that somewhere out there she was still alive. He hoped that someday he could thank her personally for saving his entire species. Warlord Thaxel stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Crushing Fist, and surveyed his fleet with satisfaction. 60 dreadnoughts, each one bristling with weapons, each one crewed by the finest warriors the Krethnak Dominion had to offer. They had conquered a dozen worlds in the past 2 years. They had never known defeat. The humans would fall just like all the others. Thaxel had studied their species carefully. They were soft. They wasted resources protecting their weak instead of culling them. They formed emotional attachments that made them predictable. They were everything the Krethnak despised. And yet, at Horizon's Edge, they had fought harder than any species he had ever encountered. 8 of their ships destroyed, and they had kept fighting until the last moment. Foolish? Yes. Inefficient? Certainly. But there was something about human stubbornness that made Thaxel uneasy. He shook off the feeling. It did not matter how hard they fought. 4 ships could not stop 60 dreadnoughts. New Portland would burn, and then the remaining human colonies would fall one by one. Within a year, humanity would be nothing more than a memory. Warlord, said his tactical officer, We are approaching the new Portland system, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 3 minutes. Excellent, said Thaxel. Order all ships to battle formation. Let us end this quickly. The Krethnak fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, weapons charged, shields raised, ready for the brief and brutal fight that awaited them. What they saw on their sensors made them freeze. Warlord, said the tactical officer, his voice strange, I am detecting additional vessels in the system. The humans have reinforced? Thaxel waved a dismissive claw. It does not matter. They cannot have more than another 10 or 12 ships. O Warlord, I am detecting 317 vessels. The command deck fell silent. Every officer, every warrior, every crew member turned to look at the tactical display. It showed the new Portland system filled with ships, not human ships. Ships of designs the Krethnak had never seen before, representing technologies they did not recognize, bearing the signatures of species they had thought were neutral or irrelevant. Thaxel felt that cold, unfamiliar feeling settle into his chest again. This time he recognized it. It was fear. Contact from the enemy fleet, said the communications officer. They are hailing us. Put it through, Thaxel growled, trying to keep his voice steady. The main view screen activated, showing a human male with gray hair and hard eyes. Behind him, Thaxel could see an alien with 4 eyes and glowing blue skin, an insectoid creature with clicking mandibles, and other beings he did not recognize. This is Admiral Kevin Price of the United Earth Coalition, said the human. You are addressing the Combined Species Alliance. You have invaded sovereign human territory. You have murdered our people. You have burned our worlds. We are here to inform you that this ends now. Thaxel forced himself to bare his teeth in what he hoped looked like confidence. You think a rabble of soft species frightens the Krethnak Dominion? We have conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed every enemy we have ever faced. Then allow me to introduce you to some of our fry. Ends, said Price. The display split into multiple feeds. The insectoid queen spoke first, her compound eyes glittering with cold fury. You attacked the humans. The humans are under our protection now. The Krix Collective does not forget our debts, and we do not forgive those who harm our allies. A massive creature filled another screen, its bulk so large that Thaxel could barely see the edges of its form. The Garati shepherds have protected the weak for millennia. We are gentle, but we are not helpless. You have mistaken kindness for weakness. That mistake will cost you. A crystalline being appeared on a third screen, its body humming with frequencies that made Thaxel's bones ache. The Telvar Sing of Justice. Your species has brought only suffering to the galaxy. Today, that suffering ends. And then the 4-eyed alien spoke, his voice calm and measured. Warlord Thaxel, 30 years ago, your raiders attacked my vessel and left me to die. A human saved my life. She asked for nothing in return. She simply helped because it was the right thing to do. Today, we are here because of that simple act of kindness. His skin glowed with fierce colors. You sought to exterminate a species that showed mercy to strangers. You chose poorly. Thaxel looked at his tactical display. 317 ships against his 60. Even Krethnak dreadnoughts could not overcome those odds. This is a bluff, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. These species have no reason to fight for humans. They will flee when the battle begins. Perhaps, said Admiral Price. Would you like to find out? The human's voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath it. The steel of a warrior who had already accepted death and been given a second chance. Thaxel had seen that look before in the eyes of enemies who had nothing left to lose. Warlord said his tactical officer quietly, I am reading weapons lock from multiple enemy vessels. Their targeting systems are active. They are not bluffing. Thaxel stared at the display. His entire career had been built on identifying weakness and exploiting it. The weak existed to serve the strong. The strong existed to rule. That was the natural order of things. But looking at the fleet arrayed against him, he realized something that shook him to his core. He was not the strong one here. He was not the predator. He had walked into a trap set by a species he had dismissed as prey, and that prey had called upon friends he never knew they had, all because of one human who had helped some strangers. 30 years ago, all ships, Thaxel said, the words bitter in his mouth. Retreat. Fall back to Dominion space, Warlord. His tactical officer stared at him in disbelief. You heard me? We cannot win this battle. Retreat now, while we still can. The Krethnok fleet began to turn, their dreadnoughts slowly pivoting away from the combined alliance. But the alliance was not content to simply let them go. Admiral Price to all ships, came the human's voice over the open channel. Pursue and engage. Do not let them escape without consequence. The Battle of New Portland lasted 47 minutes. It was not a battle in any real sense. It was a rout. The combined fleet fell upon the retreating Krethnok with coordinated fury. Human ships led the charge, their weapons blazing with vengeance for Horizon's Edge. Crick's vessels flanked the enemy, cutting off escape routes. Garati capital ships absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser vessels, their massive hulls serving as shields for their smaller allies. Telvar crystalline craft sang frequencies that disrupted Krethnok targeting systems. Throwing their weapons off target, 18 Krethnok dreadnoughts were destroyed before the survivors escaped to faster-than-light travel. Nearly a third of the Warlord's fleet gone in less than an hour. Thaxel watched the carnage from his command deck, his dreams of empire crumbling around him. He had believed that the strong ruled and the weak perished. He had believed that kindness was a flaw, compassion a vulnerability. He had been wrong. On the bridge of the relentless Admiral Kevin, Price watched the Krethnok flee and allowed himself to feel something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. All ships cease pursuit, he ordered. Let them go. They have learned their lesson. Admiral, said Lieutenant Vance, we are receiving transmissions from New Portland. The civilian population is celebrating. They say, she paused, her voice catching. They say thank you. Kevin looked out at the stars, at the fleet of alien ships that had come from across the galaxy to save his people. 8 different species, brought together by a web of debts and favors that stretched back centuries. All of it tracing back to one woman, one cargo ship. One decision to help strangers in need, Counselor Zathari? He said, I believe the debt has been paid. The Velanthi appeared on his view screen. His ancient face creased with what Kevin now recognized as a smile. The debt is paid, Admiral. But I think we have created something more valuable than any debt. We have created an alliance. And I believe that alliance will last far longer than any of us. Kevin nodded slowly. I believe you are right. Below them, 4 million humans looked up at the sky and celebrated their survival. They did not know yet about Lucy Morrow. They did not know that their entire species had been saved by an act of kindness, performed before most of them were born. But they would learn, and they would never forget. The war ended not with a dramatic final battle, but with a slow collapse. The combined species alliance pursued the Krethnok back to their own territory, not seeking conquest, but seeking justice. Warlord Thaxel was captured by Crick's forces and put on trial for crimes against sentient species. The Dominion was dismantled, its conquered worlds liberated, its military reduced to a fraction of its former strength. The Krethnok would never threaten the galaxy again. But something unexpected happened in the aftermath of victory. The alliance that had been formed to save humanity did not dissolve once the threat was gone. The species that had fought together discovered that they enjoyed working together. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Scientific cooperation flourished. Humanity, once a minor species barely worth noticing, found itself at the center of a new galactic community. Human diplomats worked alongside Valantha negotiators. Human engineers collaborated with Telvar scientists. Human merchants traded with Garati farmers and Crix manufacturers. And through it all, the story of Lucy Morrow spread across the stars. Every species in the Alliance learned about the cargo ship captain who had stopped to help dying strangers. Every child in a dozen civilizations heard the tale of how one act of kindness had changed the course of galactic history. It became legend, then myth, then something even greater. It became a principle, the Morrow Doctrine they called it. The idea that helping those in need, expecting nothing in return, was not weakness, but strength. The understanding that debts of kindness created bonds was more powerful than any treaty or alliance. Other species began to follow the example. Ships that would once have passed by distress signals now stopped to help. Civilizations that would once have ignored the suffering of strangers now reached out with assistance. The galaxy became a little kinder, a little more connected, a little more humane. All because of one woman who never sought fame or recognition. All because of one decision made in the darkness between the stars. Hi, Counselor. Dethery retired from politics 5 years after the war ended. He had served his people for nearly a century, and he was tired. He wanted to spend his remaining years with his family, watching his grandchildren grow, enjoying the peace that the Alliance had brought. But before he left public life, he had one more task to complete. Lucy Morrow was 87 years old, living in a small HFY. Say in the mountains of Montana on Earth. She had retired from cargo hauling decades ago. After the dusty road finally wore out and could fly no more, she had lived a quiet life since then, reading books, watching the stars, remembering the adventures of her youth. She had mostly forgotten about the Velanthy she had rescued all those years ago. It had been just one event among many in a long life full of journeys. She remembered their strange four-eyed faces and their glowing skin, remembered the young commander who had spoken such serious words about debt and obligation. But she had never expected to see any of them again. When the shuttle landed in her backyard, she thought she was dreaming. She walked out onto her porch, leaning on her cane, and watched as an old Velanthy emerged from the vessel. He moved slowly, carefully, with the dignity of advanced age. His skin still glowed faintly blue, but the light was gentler now, softer. "Captain Morrow," he said, "do you remember me?" Lucy squinted at him for a long moment. Then, recognition dawned in her eyes, and she laughed with genuine delight. "Commander Zethery, is that really you? My goodness, you got old. As did you, Captain." His four eyes crinkled with amusement. "May I sit with you for a while?" "Of course. Come on up. I will get us some coffee." They sat together on her porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Two ancient beings from different worlds who had been connected by chance and kindness half a lifetime ago. The coffee was strong and hot, and Zethery found that he quite liked it. "I have wanted to visit you for many years," he said, "but there was always so much to do. The war, the alliance, the politics. By the time I had the freedom to travel, I was afraid you might have passed on already." Lucy chuckled. "I am too stubborn to die easy. Always have been. So what brings you all the way to Earth?" "It cannot be just to share coffee with an old woman." Zethery set down his cup and turned to face her fully. "I wanted to thank you, properly, for what you did for me and my crew. For what you did for your entire species." "What I did for my species? I just gave you folks a ride to the nearest outpost. Nothing special about that, Captain. That is where you are wrong." Zetharia's skin flickered with deep emotion. "When you saved us, you created a debt. When the Krethnok attacked humanity, I called in that debt and brought half the galaxy to your defense. Your species survived because of what you did for us. 8 billion humans are alive today because you stopped to help some strangers." Lucy stared at him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she shook her head slowly. "That seems like a lot to put on one old cargo run. It is simply the truth. The galaxy knows your name now, Captain. You are a legend among a dozen species. They tell stories about you to their children. They teach the Morrow Doctrine in their schools." "The what now?" "The Morrow Doctrine. The principle that kindness creates strength. That helping others without expectation of reward builds bonds more powerful than any weapon." Zethery reached into his robes and withdrew a small crystal that glowed with soft inner light. "This is a memory stone. It contains the complete record of what you did for us and what we did for humanity in return. It will be displayed in the Museum of Galactic History on Volanthos Prime, so that future generations will know your story." Lucy took the crystal, turned it over in her wrinkled hands. It was warm to the touch, and inside, she could see faint images moving like a dream made solid. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "I never expected any of this. I just did what seemed right at the time." "That is exactly why the galaxy will never forget you," said Zethri. "You did not help us because you expected a reward. You did not save us because you wanted something in return. You simply saw beings in need and decided to help. That kind of pure, simple kindness is the rarest thing in the universe." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, human ships flew alongside Valanthi vessels. Krix traders bargained with Garati merchants. Telvar scientists shared discoveries with human researchers. A galaxy that had once been full of strangers was slowly becoming something like a family. "You know," said Lucy finally, "when I was young, my grandmother told me something that always stuck with me. She said that the true measure of a person is not what they do when someone is watching, but what they do when no one will ever know. She said that kindness given freely, without hope of reward, was the most precious thing a person could offer. Your grandmother was very wise, and I always tried to live by her words. But I never imagined that one act of kindness could matter this much." She looked at the crystal in her hands, at the record of events that had shaped the fate of billions. "I guess you never really know what your choices will lead to." "No," agreed Zethri. "We never do. But that is precisely why every choice matters. Every moment of kindness matters. Every time we choose to help instead of ignore, to care instead of dismiss, we plant seeds that may grow into forests we will never see." Lucy smiled. A simple, human expression that Zethari had learned to treasure over the years. "That is a beautiful way to put it. I have had 30 years to think about what you taught me," he said. "About what humanity taught me. Your species has a gift, Captain. You believe that kindness is normal. You believe that helping strangers is just what anyone would do. You do not realize how rare and precious that belief is."
Us.
"Is it really so unusual? Most species calculate costs and benefits. Most species ask what they will gain. Humans simply help, and then act surprised when others find this extraordinary." He reached out and gently touched her hand. "Never lose that, Captain. Never let your species forget what makes them special." Lucy squeezed his hand in return. "I do not think we will. Not after all this." They talked until the stars filled the sky, sharing stories and memories, building a friendship that should have begun 30 years earlier. Zethri told her about the war, about the alliance, about the galaxy that now sang her praises. Lucy told him about her life, her family, her years of quiet retirement, when it was finally time for him to leave. He stood and bowed in the traditional Valanthi gesture of deepest respect. "Thank you, Captain Lucy Morrow, for everything." "Thank you for coming to see me," she replied. "And thank you for repaying that debt, even though you never owed me anything." Zethari smiled, his skin glowing with warmth. "That, Captain, is exactly why we owed you everything." He returned to his shuttle and flew back to the stars. Lucy watched him go, holding the memory stone in her weathered hands, thinking about her grandmother and her crew and the universe of consequences that had grown from one simple choice. Above her, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was a little brighter than it had been before. A galaxy where kindness mattered, where debts were honored, where strangers reached out to help other strangers across the vast distances of space, all because one human had stopped to help when no one was watching and expected nothing in return. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the story continued, spreading from world to world. From species to species, from generation to generation, the story of when humans owe you a favor. The story of what happens when kindness is repaid 1,000-fold. The story that would never, ever be forgotten.